Welcome to Faith Works Live. Here's your host, Rebecca Haney.
Hello and welcome to Faith Works Live. It is my joy to be with you. We always say life is good. I'm glad you're here. It's the day the Lord has made, and we can rejoice and be glad in it for no other reason. Just than that. That's enough reason to have a party. I always think that's a great way to start the day. Sometimes I sing it to our kiddos. I will spare you. But it's a good reminder every day. I know that's the perspective that we should have, is that every day is a gift. And that we've been given that gift today, just this little slice of eternity, you and me, and we get to talk about what it looks like to live out our faith in such a time as this. And one of my faves and a friend of the show for a long time now, Maggie DeWitte, is our special guest today. We're going to talk about life here in our state and across the country and what we can do to stand up and defend life. Maggie, it's great to have you back.
Thanks for having me. It's always a joy to be with you.
Yes. Well, and one thing I appreciate about you just right off the bat, because every good conversation begins with a compliment, is that you're always able to, even though we have to walk through some kind of dark waters topically when we're talking about really like to support life and to value life, we have to come up against the ultimate enemy, which is death. And the alternative voices in our culture that are telling us otherwise, that anything other than life is beautiful and every person is worth protecting. But you're always able to do it with such a really kind disposition, and you always bring, I would say you bring the sunshine. You are very even keeled, you're very peaceable, as Paul talks about, and you usually have a gentle answer to turn away wrath. So good on you.
Well, thank you.
You're welcome. Oh, man. So there's a lot to talk about, as usual, on this topic for sure. And that's really the heartbeat of our show. For anyone that's new or newer, we've always been carrying the banner for life and why each and every person, when we say we are made in the image of God, that really does matter. We mean exactly that. And I think that's important to know. Why would that be important, you may ask? Because that helps us to understand some of these difficult questions. It has to be the groundwork. We really do have to have a foundation if we care about things like justice and human rights and protections and equality. We do have to have a foundation for all of those things. And it is my assertion, and what I have found to be true, that every worldview has to answer that question. And the Christian worldview does have an answer for that question. It's found in the Bible in the first chapter of Genesis, and then implemented and worked out all the way through the scripture. We need to see people the way God sees them. That is my answer to that question. And any other answer, any other approach, in my opinion, has us drawing lines and making exceptions, and does not produce the equality of human rights. It doesn't guarantee human rights for all people. Sooner or later, different groups start making different demands. And we've seen that. The reason I'm setting the table for this discussion, as you've probably seen, is a very viral questions going around right now. A famous YouTuber, who they said, the kids say he's famous. I don't know. I'm not cool enough to know who's famous about what. I hadn't heard. But a person that does social media professionally and is used to delivering very personal details and putting it all out online for fun and profit, had announced that he and his wife were pregnant and had been documenting this pregnancy, and then announced last week that he and his wife had decided to abort their child because they received a Down syndrome diagnosis. And this has gone mega viral, the whole story, and I have some theories about why, but this has, at this point, tens of millions of people have reacted to this specific story. And Maggie, I'm sure you've seen it, and when you hear this type of story, what's your first reaction?
Just honestly, profound sadness that we live in a society that we say, if you're not perfect, you don't deserve your very life. And we have no guarantees in life. We have no guarantees when you're pregnant. You know, I had 4 healthy children. I had no guarantee of what would happen or what will happen the rest of their life. And this idea that there has to be this perfection and even getting into this kind of eugenics mentality is really what the path that we're going down is, like designer babies and creating babies that have certain traits and certain qualities, and completely taking God out of the mix of that, because God is the creator of all life. And we are not God, and we shouldn't be taking a position in that area. That's his area, and he's doing a good job. We have no business getting involved in saying who should live and who should die based on their chromosomes. And I know that all of you listening know someone who has had Down syndrome. You cannot meet a more beautiful, happy, simple people than those who have that missing chromosome. My brother-in-law's brother just recently passed away from Down syndrome. I have a couple of friends whose sons have Down syndrome. They bring so much to their family that the idea of removing them because of their disability, it's profoundly sad that that's what our answer is. And we know it's true because statistically we know that the percentages are really high, like 80 to 90% of women who do receive a prenatal diagnosis of Down syndrome opt for abortion. And you just think about what that means. Yes, that's going to be tougher for your family. And 100%, there's going to be things that will come up in your family that will be hard. But we're not guaranteed an easy life. I mean, if you're a Christian, you're not guaranteed that. Nowhere does it say your life will be easy. In fact, it will be hard, and it will be the narrow path, and there will be suffering. But there's reasons behind all of it. And you go back again to God created every human being for a plan and for a purpose. Mm-hmm. And we should not be the ones that are interrupting that plan and that purpose.
Yeah. Yeah, and I think about that. So obviously we're coming at it from a Christian perspective. I'm judging just, again, sight unseen from this particular YouTuber and his wife, and I'm not saying the name because I just think they've probably gotten enough attention. If attention is currency, I think that's another unfortunate element of this, is that now a heinous act is now being used to make lots of money as a result. And, I don't even want to go down that road, but I think the issue is well worth addressing. These are real human beings. This is a real life that is involved here and that was destroyed, intentionally removed from humanity, from this world, because of a diagnosis. And I had a few thoughts on that. One is that sometimes these diagnoses are wrong. And I think that is well worth pointing out. I don't know if you know the author Sheila Walsh. She's very well known in Christian circles. If you Google her, I'm sure you know something that she's written. But she shared a very personal story for her. So several years ago, she had gotten a negative prenatal diagnosis, and the doctors kept urging her to abort her son. And she gave it up to God. And after much deliberation and many dark nights of the soul, which if any pregnant woman has ever been in this position, you know how scary all of these things are, all the what ifs that come up, because it is often framed as though you are being irresponsible if you do not abort a potentially disabled child after you get this diagnosis. They say it's the compassionate option. They say it's basically framed as the only solution, which is, again, a lie. That is the side that says that okay, that's a rant for another day. But Sheila Walsh, facing this situation, said, okay, the only thing that she could do in her conscience was to continue to give her child the chance at life and to continue to carry her child. And so she did. And that child was not born with any abnormalities or disabilities. And what she discovered eventually was that the doctors had just gotten files mixed up, that she had gotten the wrong person's file. They had delivered a diagnosis and recommended as medical professionals that she abort her baby son because of the wrong diagnosis. It wasn't even her child. Now, all of that to say, a lot of times mistakes happen. Let's say the diagnosis is accurate. does that then mean that that child who may have disabilities, different abilities, who may have struggles, who may have, medical conditions that require long-term care, special needs, however you want to put it, are they then any less human? Are they any less worthy of the same rights you and I have? And if so, why? Who gets to draw that line? Ethically, morally, legally speaking, if you draw the line at anything other than human beings deserve human rights, then none of us are safe. None of us have rights if, for whatever reason, like you said, Maggie, that argument that a person that would be a quote-unquote burden, for example, because they require expensive care, they require medications or other interventions, things like that are long-term, that doesn't hold up if the child is 2 years old or 20 years old or 50 years old. We could all be, I've heard it said there was a mom that has a child with Down syndrome, and she posted her thoughts, which I've shared on our Facebook page as well. And she said, we're all just one bad day away from being disabled. And that does not mean that we're any less human or that our rights should be any less protected. So to look at a vulnerable, innocent child in the womb, at our most vulnerable, and say that it's okay, you can exterminate those little people, I don't know how anyone can look at that and then look at themselves in the mirror and say anything good about any other human being.
Well, and it lends it to the argument, too, when you were saying about being a burden. I mean, it just lends to that whole mentality of, well, if you get older and you're suddenly a burden because, you've maybe got a disability, or you've got something wrong, or you're just getting older, that is a reason then to end your life as an elderly person or an older person. And the whole euthanasia and physician-assisted suicide, it's that same mentality. Well, you're not perfect anymore? Oh, well then you should take this pill and save us all the burden of your existence.
Yeah.
That's heinous.
Yeah. How could we see other people that way?
How could we live in a society where we have that mentality that it's okay? And I think it's only by continuing to call these kinds of things out that are hopefully getting people to think about it and to understand this isn't right.
Yeah.
No matter what influencer says what on social media, this is not right. Even if you're not Christian, it's not right by natural law. Yeah. It's not right by just any kind of ethics, of morality, of right and wrong, of justice. It doesn't meet any of those areas.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think that's really important to point out, Maggie, is that even if you're looking at it from a secular or atheistic worldview, from a human survival standpoint alone, surely we can come to the conclusion that we ought to protect other human beings in order for the continued survival of the species. But I think anyone who's attempting to just do what is right and seeking that out would say, I don't want that done to me. I don't want the simplest ethic, do unto others, which is, again, a Christian, that comes from Jesus. But if you're just going to apply a do unto others as you would have them do unto you kind of mentality, you probably don't want to be destroyed at your most vulnerable. You would want to be protected. You would want to be cared for. And that's not an oversimplification. You mentioned eugenics, Maggie, and I think that's important just to define this. People may have heard that term, and especially around here we talk about that kind of thing. But the whole idea that, and it usually starts in those elite extra academic circles and based on a flawed perception of, and a godless perception as well, of science at the time, to say that there was such a thing as the perfect human race and that you could eliminate the unnecessary, the undesirable traits and categories from humanity. And this began at the early part of the 20th century and still continues today. The name Margaret Sanger, rings with the great villains of history, and she's the one that created Planned Parenthood as a complex, but she was far from alone. There were whole hosts of academics, and even today, who will argue that no, humans do not all get human rights, and it would be better to eliminate some humans for the good of the grand race of all of us. And therein goes all the ugliest monsters of human history have bought into this philosophy and taken it literally. But many of us kind of assent to these ideas without understanding the depth to which we would sink if these were followed.
Right. I mean, they look at this as like, well, this is just one isolated incident, and this is just one family, and we can't insert ourselves into their personal decisions. But it is a pattern of behavior that is been followed, like you said, throughout history. And you look at what happened during the Holocaust and what continues to happen today with this idea that there is only certain people that are deemed worthy, which is totally against Christianity and totally against what we see as God's plan for humanity. But getting that mindset into people, like, that is what is so pervasive right now. And that's what we constantly have to fight against, is this pervasive mentality that only the fittest should survive. Only those who are deemed worthy should survive. Only those who will not be a burden. But then also you just have other people who are just like, it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter. You know, I'm gonna choose for me. And it doesn't matter if I have a healthy baby, have a sick baby, whatever. Or also leading to these people, and there are people out there today also, same mentality is like, well, I'm not going to have children because, you know, Mother Earth is overpopulated and we're taking too many of Earth's resources, and I'm not going to add one more human being to pollute our Mother Earth. Mm-hmm. There is a group of people that actually believe that as well, that are choosing to not have children, choosing to be childless because of this idea that Earth has a prominence over human beings.
Yeah, and they've been fed a lie. Like, that's an intentional thing. I don't think people wake up just naturally and have these thoughts occurring. I think we need to call out the deception that's been taking place in our world for generations that have labeled human beings as the problem, as the cancer, as the burden. Even just to call somebody those names and realize we're talking about real people. Could you look, your baby sibling in the eye and call them those things? Hopefully not. Okay, maybe I shouldn't have said siblings. They can be kind of annoying sometimes. But would you just look at your neighbor down the street? You wouldn't say that to their face. I mean, most people wouldn't. Mm-hmm. But we believe it on this scale. We dress it up in fancy academic terminology and claim to have some sort of theory or peer-reviewed journal behind these opinions. And sooner or later, we're doing the worst actions in human history, and we're glorifying it. And we're saying it's for the good of society. And if it's horrible for the individual, it cannot be good for society as a collection of individuals. I think that's just like a good baseline. And again, you would not want that done unto you. So why are we doing it to the most vulnerable that require the most protection? Why are we targeting disabled people or elderly people or the youngest of babies that require the most? That should motivate us to compassion. But I will say that I think that is actually a Judeo-Christian idea. And when we live in a society, in the impact of Western civilization that the Christians had in ancient Rome, for example, just going all the way back to the beginning, I've got all that history fresh on the brain of the start of the church. And one of the things that set the early Christians apart is that they cared for the vulnerable. Is when the pagan world would set their baby girls out on the hillsides to die and to be eaten by animals because they considered them of no value. If you were disabled, if you had birthmarks, you were considered cursed. And they would put those children out in the wild and waited for them to die, essentially, and they thought nothing of it. And the Christians were the ones who that's where the first orphanages came from. The Christians were the ones that set up baby deposits, basically, and they're like, we will take your children. If you are sick, if you are disabled, we will care for you. They set up the first hospitals as a result, the first dedicated places for people in a weak state or in a vulnerable state that needed protection, that needed care and love, and the Christians were the ones that welcomed them in. And Christians changed the whole world. As a result, the fact that we're even having these conversations, frankly, is a grace, is a consequence of lives that are lived in the light of Christ.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, absolutely. I just was thinking as you were talking about that, just what we're seeing here in Iowa with the baby boxes and the safe haven. It's that same idea. We're saving lives, and that happened because of a pastor in China who started doing that because the babies were being left to die because of the oppressive government. and their one-child policy and all of those things, and seeing so many abandoned babies, stepped up and said, I will take these babies. And now we're seeing that here in the United States. And just this week, there was another announcement about a baby boy saved by our Safe Haven baby boxes that we have here in Iowa and across the country, saving the lives of these babies who someone has deemed unworthy or unwanted or whatever the reason is, but those lives are being saved.
Yeah, and they are valuable, and we need to see people as valuable. I think that's really the crazy point in talking with someone that might espouse the other side and say, well, why shouldn't you just eliminate this child before they have the argument that's made is it's one of a burden on their parents, or they say they're not ready and they can't do these things. That's the opposite of love, though. Like, if you are a parent, your kids are going to, like, I could just kind of go, stay with me here. Every kid is a burden, and every person is a burden, right? Every single one of us, we can't do it alone. Not any one of us is born into this world entirely self-sufficient with, a 3-piece suit and a 401k plan. Like, every one of us requires help to walk, to talk, to learn, to live, to speak. And that is no different than anybody else. We are born, God designed us to be born into a safe, loving home that would nurture us, that would care for us. And when when that is disrupted, that's where the church is called to step in and be the place of care and safety and protection as well. He designed us to depend on one another and to depend on him from a theological perspective. But none of us is entirely dependent, and that doesn't mean that any one of us deserves to live any less. It's an argument for compassion. It's an argument for caring for the vulnerable, caring for those on the fringes who need us most. So to then say, we're going to look at you, and because you're vulnerable, we're going to eliminate you because you're too big of a burden, that's in the entire opposite of the way that we were designed to be. And I think anyone looking at that honestly has to come to that conclusion and just say, it's not about me. I think there's a big difference there, Maggie, and you can tell me if it's too simplistic on the other side of the break. But in my mind, you either have to be others-focused or self-focused. You either have to talk about what's good for humanity in general and recognize it. It's fascinating because the people that tend to talk about how humans are a burden, they're actually, they don't usually think of themselves as part of that problem. It's like everybody else. That's everybody else's problem, not me. But then the ones who focus on the worth of the individual, for example, the Christians, are the ones most focused on building healthy societies for generations and generations to come, on protecting everybody equally. So I just find that fascinating. We do have to take a break. I've been ranting too long. Maggie DeWitte is our special guest from Pulse Life Advocates, and we'll put the easy link down below on the podcast so that you can get more about their work. We'll talk more about what their organization is doing and ways that you can participate as well, coming up in just a moment on the other side on FaithWorks Live. There's no better time than now to stand for life. And you can stand with Iowa's original pro-life organization, Pulse for Life. They're the longest standing nonprofit pro-life organization in Iowa, and they're dedicated to informing, educating, and inspiring a new generation to value the sanctity of all human life, from fertilization until natural death. They serve at the State House. They educate in classrooms, at events. They proudly serve on the coalition of pro-life leaders. They are on the front lines of the battle against this throwaway culture of death that we see all around us, and we are winning ground. Hearts and minds are changing, and the pro-life movement is continuing to grow. And you can be a part of the exciting things that are happening right here in our own backyard at pulseforlife.org, and get your finger on the pro-life pulse. Sign up for their newsletter, find ways that you can make a difference, and how you can change hearts and minds with their pro-life apologetics course, pulseforlife.org.
In today's world, security has never been more vital. And at FaithWorks Live, we're proud to partner with VeriGuard Security. It's a professional physical security service, and they're really raising the bar in security and private investigations. Whether you need a team of professional officers to protect what you have worked hard to build, or their mobile security units for multiple properties or large locations, from business or corporate properties to your home or neighborhood. Perhaps you've got an event coming up. They secure quality security coverage for events large and small, because it's about peace of mind and protecting you, your family, your team, and your property. Settle for nothing less than the best when it comes to your security. You shouldn't have to compromise. When it comes to security, you can trust VeriGuard. Contact them today at veriguard.us. That's VARA guard.us. For security service you can trust VeriGuard.
Life is good. We're glad you're here. We're talking with my friend Maggie DeWitte from Pulse Life Advocates. You can always go to pulseforlife.org and find out more about them, and we'll tell you more about how you can get involved. We're talking, wrap it a little bit, about this viral story of a famous YouTuber. Again, I hadn't heard of him, but now many millions of people are weighing in on their decision to terminate their unborn child's life because they received a Down syndrome diagnosis. And I will say, Maggie, the good thing, if possible, to come out of this, the silver lining that we're having this conversation, is all of the wonderful parents of children with Down syndrome and their stories, and they're sharing the accomplishments and the blessings that these people are, and how special they are, and how they've changed their lives. And hearing those stories, I've just been like in a nonstop loop of sharing all of these stories day after day after day ever since I saw this, because they deserve to be celebrated. They deserve to be seen as the special, unique people that they are. And like I said, it's a sad, profoundly sad story at its crux, but the good thing to come out of it is the celebration from people that really do understand the beauty that can be seen in every individual, no matter their diagnosis.
Right. I think you said it, out of this devastation, it's become like a teachable moment for all of us to talk about something that isn't ordinarily talked about, especially, I would say, probably in that realm. Mm-hmm. I was with you, had never heard of this person, but I'm sure there's a big demographic of people who obviously did follow him because he had a big, big following. And this has caused them to talk about a topic that I would guess probably hadn't come up before this time. And so I'm hoping that it is a teachable moment, that they could see this side of the humanity and see the beauty and the gift of all life, regardless of the circumstances, regardless of the issues that this child may or may have had, that still there's humanity and there's love. And we should be thinking about life differently than what we are. And hopefully maybe some of these followers are getting that, maybe for the first time. They're having to grapple with this difficult issue. And I hope that if we're doing our job as Christians and as pro-lifers, we're sharing this information in truth and in love for them to see that, there was a mistake made. Mm-hmm. And hopefully some growth can come of it.
Yeah. Well, and how would you counter when people say, well, that's their personal choice, and you can't take away the ability to choose? Oftentimes these questions are dressed up as it's their choice. And if you don't want an abortion, then don't get one. That's fine for you, but you can't tell somebody else how difficult and how devastating this would be. And I think that was the attempt at a comeback on behalf of this particular situation, this couple, that they were essentially the victims, which is one of the reasons I think this went so viral, by the way, is they weren't necessarily sharing it as, how tragic, but as like an update, but they were expecting sympathy. And as the parents who just ended their child's life, ironically, the same YouTuber had also talked about how much of a journey they had had and how much money they had spent on saving their dog that had this, chronic illness or a life-threatening illness, and how their dog was a hero and how wonderful this was separately, like over the last year or so, I guess. And to juxtapose that with now to say, yeah, but we're not going to fight for our child's life, or we're not willing to sign up for being parents. We'll do it for our dog, but let our kid, just follow that thought for a minute. That in itself and the response to that is so, it's just heartless to me. Like, I don't understand how we can't see the contradiction there, but putting on my kinder, gentler hat, Maggie, a lot of times this is framed, I actually have one, it's framed as this is a personal choice, and if it's up to each situation is different, and so how can you tell a parent or once they receive this diagnosis, what they're supposed to do with it, because it should be their choice and you can't judge their choices. What would you say in response to that?
Well, it's not a judgment, but there's got to be the reality of when you're making a choice that impacts another human being, we make those realities and those, if you want to call them judgments, all the time. When you're making a decision that impacts another human being, then there's the reality and there's consequences. So to say that it's a personal when it affects other people, that doesn't make sense to me. And it goes back to the same argument of people saying that it's not really a human being, which we know that's bunk and science is on our side, and we've refuted that time and time again. But it still is the same argument that they come up with when you say, well, it's more than a personal decision for you because there's another person. Well, it's not really a person. Well, science actually tells us that it is really a person. And then there are people who say, well, I don't care. Sadly, there are people who say, yeah, it is, but it's still my choice. And the law says that I can do it. And so that goes back to why our laws are important and our behaviors are reflected by the laws and people's mentality are reflected. There's still people going to break the law, but there are a lot of people who are going to say, well, I'm going to follow the law. I'm basically a decent human being. I'm going to follow the law. And so it goes back to both paths that we constantly have to weave in between in this movement is the legislation and the laws and the changing the hearts and the minds and going back and forth in between both of those all of the time, because you can't have one without the other. They're equally important in order for us to get to a point where we can eliminate abortion. Now we can talk about strategy and all those other things, but it's fundamental that we are looking at what the law of the land is, but also changing hearts and minds. But just getting back to this basic natural law, even if you don't want to bring Christianity into it, this natural law, this science that this is a human being. And if it is a human being, then it needs to have equal protection. It needs to have rights under the law, just like every other human being. Yeah. And you can't do something that's going to kill another human being.
Right.
Those are laws that we have, right? You can't do that.
Yes. Yeah. If a child in the womb is human, that's always, is it the Klusendorf line? Like, what is the unborn? What is the preborn? And other philosophers mention this too, that's the critical question. And that's why I spend a lot of time talking about the personhood of the unborn child, preborn child. And then that extends as long as we're alive, like for every moment from my very beginning to the very end. If we are human beings have human rights. And there shouldn't be any exceptions to that. There's no such thing. There shouldn't be any such thing as a second-class citizen in not nobody, not know how, in the words of the Wizard of Oz. Like, that is just simple, but I don't think it's inaccurate. I think if you draw the line anywhere else, who gets to draw the line? Who gets to say who gets full human rights? Who gets to say who's a second-class citizen? Therein, again, that's like all the worst chapters of human history start that way. I don't want to be on the wrong side of history or the wrong side of righteousness, for that matter. The moment you start to draw the line, then nobody is safe. So I think if we're facing that honestly and in the sober light of day, we understand the depth of the questions we're talking about. This case brings that into full light, and I hope is causing people to work through these questions that maybe they've sidelined as uncomfortable or theoretical in the past. Speaking of laws and the important place that has in this arena specifically, like you said, we do want to have righteous laws. We want to have equal protection for preborn children as well as for elderly, for disabled people across the board. We want all humans to have that basic human right of life protected. And in our state, I know there's an opportunity to bring that vision to the Capitol as well. So that's coming up. Can you give us the details on the upcoming march at the Capitol?
Yeah. So since, the reversal of Roe v. Wade via the Dobbs decision, we decided that in addition to the National March for Life that still happens every year in Washington, D.C. in January, we wanted to have something locally. So now we have had our Iowa March for Life now for 4 years. And so Saturday, June 20th, will be our Iowa March for Life at the Capitol. And we start the day at noon. So from noon to 1, there'll be an opportunity for you to come to the rotunda. And we'll have some music and educational booths from several of the pro-life organizations across the state. An opportunity just to gather information and fellowship, and then we'll have our rally at 1, and then after the rally, then we go right out the west steps and we make our way around the Capitol to the Supreme Court building and then back for some refreshments. We also have at the area where we're going to have some refreshments, Students for Life of America will be having a display there. They were having a national event to commemorate life as well, and so we joined forces with them, and so they're going to join and have their display that they've been doing across the country right by those tables as well. So it'll be an opportunity, especially for young people, to get connected with the Students for Life organization and find out different chapters that are happening there. Mm-hmm. But we'll have Lieutenant Governor will be talking, as she is the kind of the head person for the 250 for Iowa.
Oh, okay.
She's kind of the main liaison for Iowa. She's going to be talking a little bit about the America 250. We'll have Attorney General Brenna Bird, who will give some remarks. And we'll also have Marlene Downing from Susan B. Anthony, mm-hmm. and she is going to be coming and sharing her unique perspective on abortion and their presence now in Iowa. They have some field officers that have been doing some work here in Iowa, grassroots, door knocking, that sort of thing in the state. So she'll be sharing a few remarks as well. So it's just a great opportunity to come together and just, number 1, fellowship, number 2, education, number 3, prayer, but actually prayer should be number 1. Yeah. So as I think through all of that, but then just, again, just to hear what's going on and how you might get involved. Mm-hmm. One of the things that we do at Pulse is that we're constantly offering opportunities for people to come together, whether it's through an event or a project, because we don't want to just talk about what we do. We actually want to do it. Right. And I think that's a distinction between a lot of different groups out there, is we're doing the work. We're constantly doing something almost every month because we want to change hearts and minds. And we know we can't do that by just talking, but we actually have to be doing things. Sure. And so for us, that's part of our mission, why we're so passionate about, even though it's a lot of work, we're a small outfit, but we feel so passionate that we have to have opportunities every time that we can, so that some way we can touch people's heart and get them more involved. Mm-hmm. So that will be happening Saturday, June 20th. So we would love for you to come out to that and be involved. And then right from there, then we jump into the Iowa State Fair. So we're out there all 11 days. So we have a booth in the Varied Industry Building. We are still looking for volunteers. So you take a 3-hour shift. We get a fare for the a ticket for the fair, and so you'll get to enjoy the time, but also provide a little volunteer for us, and get an opportunity to work on your pro-life chops with all the different people that you will encounter at the Iowa State Fair.
Oh, yeah. That's a place, like, if you want to test pro-life apologetics, that's a great place to do it. But honestly, when you were saying that, like, being able to change hearts and minds, it means you're actually going to have to engage. And I think that's far more effective doing it face-to-face than trying to, tweet out into the void and post things like, and not to say that you can't change minds that way. Like, God can use anything. I always say, if he can use a donkey or he can use a rock, like, he can use me too. And it's okay. Right. Like, it's all in his hands. But it really does touch people in a different way when it's a real person interacting on a real level. You can look them in the eyes. You can say, I care about you, and I care about your thinking on this and your perspective on this. Here's mine. Like, let's talk about this. For too long, we've made these assumptions in secret and in silence. And we've allowed, like, polls and a widespread opinion and news articles to hold sway, to say nothing of Planned Parenthood's indoctrination machine, where they're out there with billboards and we're like kind of quiet in the corner, like, I don't want to offend anyone. But if we value life, and we have people we love, and we say they need human rights and you need human rights. So let's have these conversations, and we can do so in a very Christ-like, very kind, very loving, even good humor type of way. And I think most people respond well to that, to say, yeah, I'm just your average neighbor down the street. I care about you and I care about life, and I think we should protect life in the state, and here's why. But tell me how you think. And that challenges assumptions many, many times. So I think that is a very effective way of doing it. I think you guys do it very well.
Right. And then that leads us right into, the fall, which we always have our fall 40 Days for Life and our spring. And again, that's another opportunity in a different way to engage with those women and those men who are, going to be entering that place of death, and offer them other options. And so we're involved in the sidewalk advocacy part of that, which we train people to effectively communicate with these men and women to help them maybe change their mind and rethink their decision. Or alternatively, if they've made that devastating decision, to offer them help and healing with the post-abortive ministry. So, that's sort of what lends our fall, and then we go into our gala season, which is in November, and we're really excited this year. We're bringing in Jim Caviezel, who is the actor who portrayed Jesus in The Passion of the Christ. So I'm sure most people have seen that movie. It's one that we watch pretty regularly, especially around Easter and during the Lenten season, but he's got a powerful pro-life story, and we just can't wait for him to come. I'm still like, can't believe that everything fell into place that we have him. So we're already selling tickets and tables, as you can imagine, because he's a pretty famous guy. He was also in Sound of Freedom. Yeah, so he has a huge ministry on human trafficking, and the Sound of Freedom movie that came out. If you haven't seen that, it's heart-wrenching, but one of those movies like The Passion or like Schindler's List, it's like one of those movies that you have to watch at some point. But anyway, so those have been two of his bigger movies. He's got a couple other ones that he's filming, but he's going to be our keynote, and that will be on November 21st. And it'll be at the Iowa Events Center downtown. And so you can get on our website at pulseforlife.org and get tickets and tables and more information about that event.
Yeah, and I would say get them early. But there's so many ways to be involved. Look at that. Look at all you're doing. Yes. That's awesome.
Yes.
And I think that does go into the the assumption that, again, if we speak up, it's going to be controversial, and we'd rather not rock the boat, or don't want to make enemies or whatever. I am firmly on the other side. I am the one that's more likely to say the thing. So I have my own failings, but I tend not to leave things unsaid if I think they're important. That being said, there's very much I think a loving, kind way to do it. I think love rejoices not in evil, but rejoices in the truth. That's the type of love that God embodied. And he was never afraid of controversy. He's the one that sent Jesus into the world and gave that dividing line. He's the one that spoke through the prophets and said, guys, what you're doing is destroying you. You need to turn around. You need to repent. You need to stop.
The change tables in the temple. My favorite.
There are some tables that just need to be turned over. All right. Right. and then that's how restoration can occur. And that's how true justice can occur, is by stopping the thing that's wrong. You got to call it out, and then you say, actually, here's the path to life and love and peace. Here's the path to abundance, and choose life. God gives us those choices, and I think we are accountable, especially in our country, for making those choices, for the laws and the people, the lawmakers that represent us. Like, we have a voice, and God gives us that extraordinary blessing, and we are beholden to we are responsible to use it well. And so that's what I hope we are doing well. And I had one other question, Maggie, and I love for this to be a very encouraging, uplifting time for our pro-life peeps. And I wonder if you've seen anything change in the discourse over the last little while. The thought in my head was, what is it that we're doing wrong that we could do better as pro-lifers? And maybe that's a little bit too, incendiary of a way to say it. I think we have a lot of these debates. For some people, even just entering into that discussion, entering into this realm is a big step. And so whatever we can do, if we're willing to speak up in whatever way, I think that God honors that step of faith. For many of us who have been out kind of in the streets on the sidewalks and at the Capitol and doing the thing, I think we can become kind of weary sometimes, or we get like overly combative, and then we see everything as a threat. And I'm wondering if what you see and ways that you would kind of gently guide and advise as we talk about ways that we can change hearts and minds. We also have to be accountable for how we're doing, what we're saying, all those things. So I'd just love to get your perspective on ways that we can be most effective as we enter into this.
Yeah. I mean, really great points. And I would say when you're, as you say, dipping your toe into this arena, it's all about your approach, right? And it's also about praying and asking the Holy Spirit to guide you, because we don't have the words, but God does. And if we're opening ourselves to God to help lead that conversation, He will. But you have to be open and kind of empty yourself of your own pride and ego to be able to say, Lord, what do you want me to impart to this person? But you have to have that openness, and you have to have that courage. Because a lot of times that's what holds people up, is the fear that, number one, they don't know what to say, or they're going to say the wrong thing. Or number two, like you said, I'm going to offend somebody, and it's going to be a big, abrupt, argument type of thing. And I think that if you take it to prayer, and again, it's your approach and it's your tone. And the less combative you can be, the more people will listen to what you have to say. It's when you get, and trust me, I'm saying this to myself too, because the more riled up you get, because when you're passionate,
sure,
it's hard to rein that in, and I'm guilty of that too. But people tend to turn that off, when you get so enthralled in it. So it's about approach, it's about tone, and it's about taking it to the Holy Spirit. But conversely, for those who have been in the trenches and have the weariness, what I'm seeing right now is sort of a division between some people who had the weariness, and they almost have this tone and this approach that is similar to what I see with like the pro-abortion. It's like kind of some of this angry, and sort of mean and attackful. And that is not of the pro-life movement that I want to be associated with or a part of or have seen. You know, the people that I know of that have worked tirelessly on this issue, and sacrificed so many things to keep pushing on this issue. It's, their approach is love, and their approach is kindness. And it's hard to still have that kind of love and kindness when you've been in the trenches, but you have to keep yourself in Christ, because it's so easy to get to that other area where you're becoming attack, and you're becoming anger, and you're pointing the finger, and you're saying you're not pro-life, and you're not doing this, and you're not doing that. And that I don't want to have anything to do with, because that is, to me, that's not of God. And it's okay to call people out. You have to call people out, but you can call people out in a way that's loving and Christian, and not be a keyboard warrior and calling people out online and all of that kind of stuff. That, to me, is not going to help us.
Yeah. I think it definitely helps to define the mission and to understand what it is we're actually fighting for, not just what we're fighting against. Those are sort of two sides of the same coin, but it does matter what you focus on. And I think what you focus on tends to be what you move toward. That if you are focused on Christ first, like you said, and bringing the world to know him through the good news of Jesus Christ and the gospel, and recognizing that every single one of us needs to repent and be transformed. We all need grace every single day. If I know I'm in that boat, then I'm not above anybody else. Like, I think I'm pretty clear on this particular issue, and I think where I stand is consistent with the Bible and with the God who made me and loves me, and who loves you, and who loves every single person made in his image. That's the side I want to be on. But at the same time, I'm going to make mistakes. I'm going to say the wrong thing. I probably have in this hour. As evidence, check the tape. It's all out there. But that means that I can't take a position of arrogance over anybody else. And that I really do care about the heart of the people that I'm speaking to. That ultimately matters. What does it matter if I win every argument, but in the end lose my soul? Like, I think that really matters. How we treat people, like, we should always see that other person, even if we consider them the enemy, as someone for whom Jesus died. So when it comes down to it, when it's difficult, and when you grow weary in well-doing, or you just get frustrated and you want to shake somebody, like, just say, okay, that person, Jesus loves that person. Lord, help me see them the way Jesus sees them, as tough as it might be. Because sometimes he looks at me and he shakes his head. So we're all in that same boat. But yeah, I think you do a great job of that, Maggie. I know, it's tough. But I appreciate all that you and the team at Pulse do every single day to stand up and defend life, and the opportunities that you give, and you make it really easy for the average Iowan to be involved in this and to take a stand. And you guide us in, I think, a good, logical, well-grounded worldview foundation from which we can answer these questions too. So thank you for all that you do.
Well, and you as well for giving us the platform to share this, because we don't get this opportunity a lot, honestly. And to be able to have a platform to share these kinds of important issues to another friendly face, instead of the normal kind of interview where it's more trying to get you.
Yeah. Yeah,
I appreciate them.
I've seen a few of those.
Yeah.
No problem. Well, and on this issue, like, I honestly do think it should be in a logical, fair-minded world. This should be a bipartisan issue. It should be across party lines. It should be a matter of just understanding human survival, and to say nothing of the fact that we can look in another person's eyes and say, you are special. You are worthy. And that God says that's true for every single one of us. And that the boundary lines that we've drawn are all artificial. When it comes to him, is that every single one of us, male, female, rich, poor, strong, weak, however you define those lines, across the rainbow of variety of humanity, every single one of us is a unique image bearer, never to be repeated. And he looked at the whole world throughout all of time, and he said, I want you here now. for his purposes. That is mind-boggling. It's humbling. And that's also true for every single person you'll meet today. Not a one of them is a mistake. Not a one of them is repetition. No one's a glitch in the system. Every single person is uniquely an image bearer of the Most High God, and he has them there, and he has you here for a reason, for this moment, for right now, for our good and his glory. And that's where we're going to leave it today. That thought is big enough to carry us, I think. That's what it keeps coming back to for me. And if that's true for me, it's true for you, it's true for everyone here on this planet, and I'm going to trust him. I'm going to trust his wisdom and his purpose. And I just can't believe that he's weaving all these tapestry threads together to make this amazing, beautiful picture. And I'm going to trust him with that. I'm glad just to be a part of it. I'm just happy to be here. And I'm happy you're here, Maggie. Thank you for joining us. Maggie DeWitte from Pulse Life Advocates. I'll put their website down below, but check out pulseforlife.org and their list of events. The next one that's coming up is the March for Life, so check that one out. God willing, I'll be there too, up at the Iowa Capitol, so that's the first one. And then don't forget the State Fair, and Jim Caviezel is coming in this fall, so get your tickets now. And until next time, our mission is to love God, to serve people, and to live free. Thanks for listening to FaithWorks Live.